Welcome back to the Haunt Vault, where the faintest sounds and smallest shadows can lead to the darkest discoveries. Tonight, we bring you The Quiet Voice, a story that will draw you into a mother's world where a whisper is never just a whisper. As something stirs in the silence, what begins as barely noticeable slowly tightens its grip. What is it? And why does it feel so close? Stay with us as we delve into a mystery that will make you question what you hear and what you think you know.
It started with a whisper. I woke up in the middle of the night, startled by what sounded like someone murmuring right next to me. My eyes snapped open, scanning the room, but it was empty. The noise faded quickly, leaving my heart pounding against my ribs. I told myself it was just a leftover fragment from a dream and tried to shrug it off. Turning over, I pulled the covers around me tightly, willing sleep to return. The next morning, things felt normal again. The routine of making breakfast for Sophie, my 8-year-old daughter, and helping her get ready for school brought a sense of comfort. I loved those mornings, her bright laughter, the way she told stories about her day as if they were the most important things in the world. She was my world after all. I couldn't imagine life without her, but something was off, and I couldn't shake the feeling. I was sitting in the carpool lane that afternoon, waiting for Sophie to come out of school, when I heard it again, loud and clear.
She's a burden. You don't need that.
My breath caught. I jerked my head toward the empty passenger seat, half expecting to see someone there, but of course, there was no one. The voice had come from within my own head. Stress, I thought. It's just stress. I shook it off and turned my focus back to the school gates. That evening, while Sophie and I were working on her homework, the voice returned. She was struggling with her math, her little face scrunched up in concentration, and I was patiently guiding her through each problem when it hit me.
She'll never get it. She's holding you back.
I froze, blinking in disbelief. My heart began to race again. I stared at Sophie, trying to push away the sudden, irrational wave of frustration that bubbled up inside me. She was just a child, my child, and I loved her more than anything. But the thought had come, unbidden and dark, and I couldn't understand why. Days passed, and the whispers only grew louder, more insistent. I began to notice them at odd moments, braiding Sophie's hair in the morning, packing her lunch, even when we were just sitting together watching TV.
She's ungrateful. She doesn't appreciate you.
The thought came, sharp and intrusive, just as Sophie looked up at me with a smile. My hands trembled slightly as I finished braiding her hair. The smile I forced onto my face felt wrong, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself it was nothing. But as time went on, the voice wouldn't leave me alone. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table pretending to scroll through my phone, it spoke again, louder than before.
She's a drain on your life. You'd be happier without her.
I clenched my fists, knuckles white. The whispers made me feel guilty and ashamed. I loved Sophie. I did. So why did the thoughts make sense? Why did the voice seem so reasonable? Sophie called out from the living room, asking if I'd play a board game with her. I managed a weak smile and said, "Maybe later, sweetie." The disappointment in her face cut deep, but the voice didn't stop.
She's ruining your life.
Every little thing Sophie did started to grate on me. Her voice, her messes, her endless questions. I found myself snapping at her for things that never used to bother me, like a spilled glass of juice or a forgotten homework assignment. And always, the voice was there, pushing, twisting my thoughts into something darker.
She's a disappointment. She'll never be good enough.
I hated myself for it. I hated that I was starting to believe it. One night, Sophie smiled up at me from her bed as I tucked her in. "I love you, Mommy," she said, her little voice so sweet it should have melted my heart. But all I could think of was what the voice whispered next.
She's lying. She doesn't really love you. She's just using you.
My hands shook as I kissed her goodnight. I whispered back, "I love you too." But even as the words left my lips, I felt like a fraud. Over time, the voice became more demanding, more direct. It stopped suggesting things and started telling me what to do.
She's the reason your life is falling apart. You need to do something about it.
I stood in the kitchen one afternoon, staring out the window at Sophie playing in the yard, while the voice urged me on.
You know what you need to do. She's better off gone. You both are.
I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the counter until my knuckles ached. The voice was right. The pain, the frustration, it would all end if I glanced down at the knife on the counter, its gleaming blade catching the kitchen light. My fingers curled around the handle, and I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. That night, while trying to unwind after putting her to bed, I heard it again.
It's the only way. You'll be free. She'll be free tonight while she's asleep. Do it.
My breath came in shallow gasps as I took slow steps toward the hallway. Sophie's laughter echoed in my mind, so innocent, so trusting. My grip tightened on the knife. I reached her bedroom door and paused, my heart pounding. The voice was relentless, cold, and logical.
Do it. She'll never feel a thing.
I opened the door to find Sophie fast asleep, clutching her stuffed animal. I stood there, staring at her peaceful face, the knife heavy in my hand. And then I froze in horror. I looked into the window and saw my reflection, but it wasn't me staring back. It was something else, something dark, twisted. It smiled.
Thanks for joining us on the Haunt Vault. In tonight's tale, The Quiet Voice, we were reminded of how fragile the mind can be when faced with something unknown, something that whispers from the shadows. When the line between our own thoughts and a darker presence begins to blur, the consequences can be terrifying. If you enjoyed this unsettling story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another chilling episode. Until next time, trust your instincts and be wary of the whispers. Stay haunted.